I know how that title sounds. But the truth didn't start with a door closing. It started weeks earlier, in a place no one ever associates with danger, a repair shop that always smelled faintly of old leather, engine oil, and someone's forgotten thermos of bitter tea. I was tightening the last bolt on a customer's motorcycle when she walked in, my girlfriend's older sister. Mira. Most people announced themselves when entering the shop. She didn't. She just stepped inside as if she'd already been part of the place, her presence sliding in quietly but somehow filling the room. She wore a dark green coat, half-buttoned, hair tied loosely like she hadn't meant to come here but changed direction halfway through her day. I remember blinking at her, stupidly, because she did that thing mature women do, the thing that looks like confidence but feels more like a private decision you're not allowed to question. She said, "Your phone was off. So I thought I'd check if you were alive." I wiped my hands on a rag, trying not to stare at her mouth when she spoke. "I didn't know you had my number." "I didn't," she said. "I asked your girlfriend." The way she said girlfriend told me she had opinions she wasn't going to share. She leaned her elbow on the counter, watching me work like she was evaluating something other than machinery. Not flirtation, something slower, heavier, like she was trying to understand a piece of a puzzle she'd never meant to assemble. "You're good with your hands," she said. My wrench slipped. She didn't smile. She wasn't the type who joked to break tension, she let silence do that for her. I cleared my throat. "I just fix things." "Not everything can be fixed," she murmured, almost to herself. And for a moment, the shop felt too quiet. The kind of quiet where you suddenly hear your heartbeat in your ears. We barely talked after that. She asked if I had jumper cables, I handed them to her. She tried to pay, I waved her off. She insisted, I refused again. I don't know why, maybe because I wanted to do something for her, even if it was tiny. She finally gave up, sighed, and rested the cables against her hip. Then came the moment I still can't explain. As she turned to leave, she paused at the doorway and looked back. Not a normal look. It was longer, lingering, questioning. Like she wasn't sure what she wanted me to say, or worse, like she was sure, and hoped I wouldn't say it out loud. "You should keep your phone charged," she said lightly. "People worry." She meant something else. I heard it in the way her voice softened at the end. My hands were still oily, still shaking slightly, but I lifted them anyway in a half-wave. "Ridiculous." She noticed. "You're nervous," she said. That time she did smile, small, private, almost sympathetic. "I'm not," I lied. She didn't call it out. She just nodded once, as if she knew exactly what the truth was but didn't want to embarrass me with it. "See you around," she said, pushing the door open. Cold air swept in. Right before she stepped out, she stopped, just half a breath, and met my eyes again. A pause. A spark I pretended I didn't feel. Then she left. I finished my shift, locked up, went home, but that last look, the quiet one she didn't explain, stayed lodged in my mind. It still is. And I keep wondering why she stopped at the door like that. Why she looked back. Why me? And if she felt it too. The second time I saw Mira, she wasn't wearing that sharp confidence she carried into the repair shop. She looked tired. The kind of tired you don't get from lack of sleep, but from holding everything together for too long. It was a week later, late evening, and I had just locked the shop when I heard her call my name, not loud, not urgent, just steady. "Hey. Sorry. Do you have a minute?" She stood beside her car, the hood half open like she'd tried to fix something herself. Streetlights hit her in a way that made the silver in her hair look intentional, elegant. She crossed her arms when I walked over, like she wasn't sure she wanted help but didn't know how to ask without sounding vulnerable. "The engine light came on," she said. "I don't know what I did wrong." "You didn't do anything wrong," I replied. She exhaled, not relief, just a quiet release of something she didn't want me to notice. I noticed anyway. While I worked, she hovered a few steps back, pretending to scroll through her phone but glancing up every few seconds. I caught her once. She looked away quickly. "You're good at this," she said after a while. I shrugged. "Just paying attention." She gave a faint, almost amused breath. "You say that like it's simple." Maybe it wasn't. Maybe she was talking about more than the engine. Her hands drew my attention next. She kept rubbing her thumb over the edge of her phone case. Nervous. Or thinking. Or both. Her nails were short, practical. One finger had a faint smudge of pen ink, like she'd been writing things down too fast to care. "You okay?" I asked before I could stop myself. She didn't answer immediately. She looked past me, toward the shops across the street already closing their shutters. Long day," she said finally. "Long week." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, a crack she disguised with a dry laugh. I didn't push. She wouldn't have let me. A cold breeze drifted through, lifting the loose strands of her hair. She closed her eyes for a second longer than a normal blink, just a moment of stillness, like she was letting herself fall apart for half a breath before pulling herself back together. I found the issue, fixed it easily, and closed the hood. "You're all set." She nodded. She didn't smile. She tried to, but her lips only tugged at one corner, then gave up halfway. "You're kind," she said quietly. It wasn't a compliment. It sounded almost like a warning. I didn't know what to say, so I stuffed my hands into my jacket pockets and said the safest thing I could think of. "It's nothing." "Really?" She shook her head once, a slow, almost sad motion, and stepped closer than she needed to. Not touching, just closer. Some people step back when they feel something. Mira stepped forward, as if trying to test how close she could get without giving herself away. "Still," she murmured. "Thank you." The street was quiet. Too quiet. The kind that makes even simple words feel heavier. She opened her car door, paused, and glanced at me with that same lingering look as last time, the one she didn't want to explain, and I didn't know how to ignore. "See you around," she said. But this time, the words felt less like a farewell and more like a promise neither of us should have made. It wasn't supposed to be a late night. She'd only stopped by the shop to drop off a form her sister needed me to sign, nothing special, nothing dangerous. But then the rain came down in sheets, the power flickered twice, and the sound of thunder rolled over the metal roof loud enough to make her flinch. "Great," she muttered. "Just what today needed." I offered her a seat inside while we waited for the storm to ease. She hesitated like she was weighing something invisible, then stepped in, brushing water off her sleeves. The shop lights cast a soft glow over her face, tired but still holding on to that quiet resilience she wore like armor. "Do you ever get tired of pretending you're fine?" she asked suddenly. I froze halfway into putting a kettle on for tea. "What do you mean?" She shrugged, as if realizing she'd said too much. "Ignore me. Storms make me dramatic." But the question lingered between us, warm and dangerous. We sat on opposite stools, a small workbench between us, sipping tea that steamed up the air. The storm made the whole shop hum, the metal walls, the fluorescent lights, even the tools. It felt like the world had narrowed itself to the two of us. "You look like you haven't slept in days," I said. "Observant again," she replied. Not annoyed. Just stating it like it was a trait she wasn't sure she wanted me to have. Then softer, "It's been a lot." She didn't explain what a lot meant. She didn't need to. Her shoulders sagged an inch, her fingers tightened around the warm cup, and for a moment she looked her age, not in a bad way, but in the way someone looks when they've carried too much for too long. Something about seeing her like that felt intimate in a way neither of us intended. "You can talk about it," I said quietly. She gave a small laugh, one without humor. "You're the last person I should be confiding in." "Why?" She met my eyes. A slow, heavy, lingering look that made my throat tighten. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me. Then her phone buzzed against the metal bench, the sound sharp enough to break whatever was happening. She closed her eyes, exhaled through her nose, and flipped it over before I could see the screen. "Your ex?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Something like that," she said, voice low. The storm hit louder. Her fingers trembled slightly as she set the phone aside. I pretended not to notice, but she knew I saw. She reached out for her tea again, and the back of her hand brushed mine. Not deliberate. Not exactly an accident either. She didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. A breath. A pause. A moment with too much weight for two people who should not be sitting this close with a locked door and a storm isolating them from the world. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You're just waiting out the rain," I said. "Is that what you think we're doing?" Her eyes held mine like she already knew my answer. Before I could speak, before I could ruin something or make something worse, the storm's lightning snapped bright through the window. She stood up quickly, too quickly, knocking her knee against the bench. "I should go," she said, grabbing her coat. She reached for the door, paused, looked back at me with a question she didn't dare ask. And just for a second, her hand tightened around the handle like she was waiting for me to stop her. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the air between us hadn't cleared. Not after the storm ended. Not after she walked out of the shop without looking back. Not after I replayed her last glance so many times it carved itself into my memory. I didn't expect to see her again the next evening. But there she was, leaning against her car outside the shop, arms folded, like she'd been standing there long enough to think about leaving twice and talk herself out of it both times. "You weren't picking up," she said quietly. "I was in the back," I replied. "Did something happen?" She shook her head, too quickly, too defensively. "No. I just didn't want to go home yet." Her voice cracked on home. Barely. But in the quiet street, it sounded loud. I unlocked the door and let her inside. We didn't turn on the bright lights, just the small lamp over the counter. It made everything dim, slower, almost intimate in a way neither of us acknowledged. She walked to the workbench, trailing her fingertips over a metal tray of screws like she needed something physical to anchor her. "You left in a hurry yesterday," I said. She froze. Her hand hovered over the tray, breath caught halfway. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't what?" "Don't make me explain something I don't understand." Her honesty hit the room harder than any thunderstorm. I stepped closer, not close enough to touch her, but close enough to see how tense her shoulders were, how she was breathing through something she didn't have words for. "Mira," I said softly. She finally looked at me. Not avoiding, not guarded, exposed. Like she was standing on the edge of something she'd never meant to approach. "What are we doing?" she asked. Not angry. Not flirtatious. Just tired. Desperate. Almost pleading. "I don't know," I answered. She nodded once, like that was the only answer she expected. Or feared. A long silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable, but thick with everything we hadn't said. She leaned her hip against the counter, arms gripping herself, as if she thought keeping her body still would keep the truth from spilling out. I didn't come here to start something, she said. I needed a place to breathe. And it scares me that this, her eyes flicked between us, feels like the only place I can do that. I swallowed hard. You could have gone anywhere. No, she said. No, I really couldn't. Her inhale trembled at the end. She didn't hide it this time. She took one step toward me. Just one. But it felt like crossing a line neither of us had drawn intentionally. We can stop, I whispered. If you want. Don't say things you don't mean, she breathed. I meant it. She stared at me like she was trying to find a lie on my face and failing. Then, barely audible, she said, I don't know if I want you to stop. I thought her last words would be the hardest part, I don't know if I want you to stop. But it was everything that came after that changed the air between us. She didn't move closer. She didn't pull away either. She just stood there, breathing like someone who'd held their breath far too long. Then her phone buzzed again. Same tone as the night of the storm. Same flicker of dread crossing her face. She closed her eyes. Her jaw tensed. And she did something she hadn't done before. She turned the phone toward me. Not to show me the screen, but to show me that she didn't want to look at it. It's him again, she said. Your ex? I asked carefully. She shook her head, then nodded, then shook it again. Not exactly. But close enough. She set the phone down on the counter, like it burned. A voicemail icon blinked on the lock screen. Mira, I began. Just play it. She looked away. Maybe then I'll stop pretending I'm fine. I didn't want to intrude, but she had already stepped back, arms crossed tight, as if bracing herself. So I hit play. Mira, please. I saw you parked outside today. I just want to talk. You don't have to shut me out like this. A pause. A frustrated exhale. Look, I know I messed up. I know you don't trust me. But you can't just replace people. She snatched the phone from my hand before the message could finish. Not angrily, protectively. I'm not replacing anyone, she said quietly. Her voice shook on the anyone. She took a long breath. Long enough that I didn't dare speak. I was with him for, God, 12 years. She pressed her fingers to her temples, as if the number itself hurt. Long enough that leaving didn't feel like starting over. It felt like losing a part of myself I couldn't grow back. I leaned against the counter beside her but kept distance, just enough to show I wasn't pushing. You don't have to talk about this if, yes, I do. She laughed, a helpless sound. And I don't even know why I'm telling you. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the phone face down. I noticed every small motion, the way she avoided my eyes, how her breathing hitched just before she spoke again. He wasn't a bad man, she said. Just someone who stopped seeing me. And when someone stops seeing you long enough, her voice thinned. You start disappearing without realizing it. I didn't mean to reach out. But my hand moved before I thought, touching the edge of her sleeve, not her skin, just fabric. Something so small, but she froze like I'd uncovered a hidden bruise. Mira, I whispered. You're not invisible. She looked at me then. Fully. Raw. No guard, no distance, nothing held back. You remind me of someone I used to be around, she said softly. Who? I asked. She swallowed. Someone who made me feel seen. Silence. Heavy. Changing everything without a single step taken. Then, barely above a breath, she added, and that terrifies me. I didn't realize how still the room had become until she stopped talking. Even the clocks on the wall seemed to hesitate, ticking softer, as if they didn't want to intrude on whatever fragile thing had opened between us. Mira stood there, hands pressed lightly to the workbench, shoulders rising and falling with slow, uneven breaths. Not running. Not hiding. Just exposed in a way I'd never seen her. "You terrify me," she'd said. Not because of me, but because she finally felt something again, and didn't know what it would cost. I stepped closer. Not enough to crowd her, just enough that we shared the same pocket of warm air in the dimly lit shop. "You don't have to be scared of me," I whispered. "I'm not. A beat. I'm scared of what this is." She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at the floor, as if the truth was too much to meet head-on. I could have lied. Said it was nothing. Said it would pass, fade, dissolve if we ignored it long enough. But the space between us was already humming with something too real for pretending. "Mira," I said softly, "we've been trying not to see this since the day you walked in." Her lips parted, not to speak, just in quiet recognition. She'd felt it too. We both knew. "It shouldn't be happening," she murmured. "I know. It's messy. I know. And unfair. I know." I let the honesty sit there. "I also know we're both still here." She finally lifted her gaze to mine. A long, searching look, not hungry, not reckless, just profoundly human. Two tired souls trying to decide if they could trust the weight of what they felt. Thunder rumbled far off in the distance, a leftover reminder from last night's storm. But inside the shop, everything softened. She took a slow step toward me. Barely anything. Just a shift of weight, a surrender of distance. "You're too young for this," she said quietly. "Maybe," I said. "But I'm here." Her breath caught the smallest sound, but enough to send a tremor through her composure. "And I don't want to ruin your life," she whispered. "You won't. You don't know that." "I don't need to." I swallowed. "I just need to know you're not alone in this." Myra's hand moved, hesitantly, almost involuntarily, stopping inches from mine. She didn't reach fully. Didn't touch. Just hovered there, trembling slightly, waiting to see if I'd meet her halfway. I did. I let my fingers brush hers. Barely a touch. Soft, patient, unspoken, the kind of contact that doesn't announce anything but admits everything. She inhaled sharply, eyes flicking to our hands like she couldn't believe she'd let herself cross that invisible line. We stood like that for a long moment. Silent. Breathing the same air. Sharing the same truth neither of us dared say out loud. Finally, she exhaled, long, shaky, surrendering something she'd carried for years. "Stay," she whispered. Not a command. Not a plea. Just a truth she couldn't hide anymore. And for the first time, she didn't apologize for wanting me there. I'm telling this story now from a place I couldn't have imagined back then, somewhere quieter, steadier, softer. Time has a strange way of smoothing out the edges of moments you once thought would split you open. But some memories don't fade, they just settle differently. This is one of them. That night, the one where everything shifted, we didn't kiss, didn't confess, didn't label anything. And yet, it was the most honest we had ever been with each other. Sometimes truth doesn't arrive as a thunderstorm. Sometimes it's just two people sitting close enough that the silence stops being empty. In the months that followed, we changed in small, almost invisible ways. I learned how to listen, not to her words, but to the quiet spaces between them. She learned how to stay, even when she was scared of what staying meant. We didn't rush. We didn't pretend. We let things breathe. Looking back, I realized the turning point wasn't a single touch or a dramatic moment. It was the softness. The gentle decision to keep choosing each other when it would have been easier to step back. Love, I've learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet agreement, I'm here. You're here. Let's see where this goes. I used to think love had to announce itself, fireworks, racing heartbeat, some cinematic clarity. But she taught me that real love grows in the moments no one else would notice, sipping late-night tea together, laughing at something stupid, her hand brushing mine as if testing whether the world would collapse if she stayed close just a second longer. It never did. Instead, it opened. She changed in ways I didn't see at first. The girl who once hid behind jokes to mask her vulnerability began letting her guard down, not all at once, not dramatically, but in pieces. A shared story here. A shaky truth there. A look that lingered a little longer each time. And me? I changed, too. I stopped running from the softness I thought made me weak. I let myself feel deeply, fully, honestly, and it didn't break me. It turned me into someone capable of loving without fear. Even now, when I think back to that night, I remember one thing more than anything, the quiet. The kind that wraps around you instead of suffocating you. The kind that tells you you're exactly where you're supposed to be, with exactly the right person. That was the moment I realized love doesn't always arrive like a revelation. Sometimes it arrives like a breath you didn't know you were holding finally being released. And maybe that's why this story stayed with me. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?